Welcome to this edition of Head to Head. I'm your host, Cam McKinney, and this is episode number 224 of the podcast. And in this episode of the podcast, I am talking about quarterback Lamar Jackson and the Baltimore Ravens not agreeing on a long-term contract extension. During the early weeks of the NFL season, one of the biggest storylines have been the Ravens not coming to a long-term agreement with their franchise quarterback Lamar Jackson. The 25-year-old Jackson, in 4 full seasons with the Ravens, has thrown 87 touchdowns, 32 interceptions, with a 63.9 completion percentage. The thing that sets Jackson apart from his peers is his ability to run. Jackson has averaged almost 6 yards a carry and has had 2 seasons of rushing for more than 1,000 yards in 2019 and 2020, the most ever by a quarterback. And he has the record for most rushing yards in a season by a quarterback with 1,206. He's a 2-time Pro Bowler and won NFL MVP in 2019. Jackson seems like the type of player you would want to lock up and keep on your team, but him and the Ravens did not come to terms on a contract, and reports claim that Jackson turned down $133 million fully guaranteed, which would be more than what quarterback Kyler Murray just received from the Arizona Cardinals. The consensus is Jackson wants to get closer to the over $230 million fully guaranteed that Deshaun Watson got from the Cleveland Browns. It makes perfect sense why Lamar Jackson would feel that way. Deshaun Watson hasn't played a football game in over 2 years. He has been suspended by the NFL, but yet he is now paid more than a guy like Lamar Jackson, who is putting in the hard work and starting every football game and running the ball at an elite level unlike any other quarterback in the league. So Jackson looks at that situation and goes, wait a minute, a guy who isn't even playing football is making more money than me? That just doesn't make any sense. And on the flip side, you can fully understand why the Baltimore Ravens don't want to come anywhere near that number of $230 million fully guaranteed. Just because the Cleveland Browns made a decision with Deshaun Watson does not mean that every NFL franchise has to dole out that kind of money for their starting quarterback. And look, Deshaun Watson might be better than Lamar Jackson, but he's not $100 million better, especially with the controversy surrounding him. It's not a good look for the league that every contract given by a starting quarterback is going to be compared to the one given to Deshaun Watson. That should not be the measuring stick for any of these type of deals. One of the most talked about aspects of these negotiations is that Lamar Jackson is acting as his own agent. This makes Jackson an easy target for the media. Everyone thinks he's going to leave money on the table. The media was super harsh that Richard Sherman became his own agent as well. It's just not a good look when no one else in the entire NFL who's a starting quarterback is acting like their own agent. Fair or not, you're going to be criticized if you act as your own agent in the NFL. I also think that it just puts some undue pressure on Lamar Jackson. All you should be worrying about is winning football games on Sunday. Now you're doing that while also thinking about your long-term future. I just don't think that that's a good mix. Also, I think it opens the door that these negotiations become more personal for Lamar Jackson and the Ravens because they are negotiating with one another. I think an agent is that good mediator, the guy in between both of those parties. There's a reason that agents exist. Now, when the Ravens reject Lamar Jackson, they have to do it in front of him and not his representatives. Like, I just don't think that's going to work out very well in the end. Maybe I'll be wrong, and maybe Lamar Jackson is going to get a ton of money from the Ravens and they're still going to have a good relationship, but I think him being his own agent could tear that relationship apart. Agents act like the shield for the players, so they don't have to hear every bad contract offer. They don't have to be in every single negotiation. Again, there's a reason why every player has an agent, and Lamar Jackson might just need an agent to resolve the situation. I'm just curious about how other teams in the NFL feel about this situation. Do they want to negotiate with a guy who acts as his own agent because they know he's going to accept a really bad deal? Or are they afraid of the fact that Lamar Jackson is being irresponsible and acting as his own agent? The whole situation is quite curious. I'm not really sure how he got here with Lamar Jackson. I don't know the specifics of why he is his own agent, I just think it's a mistake overall because it's putting all the pressure on you to make your life good. You have to get your contract and you have to play at an elite level. It's quite simple. Let your play do the talking and let your agent do the talking behind the scenes. That's why agents exist. Nobody wants to give their money away to an agent, but it's just how the NFL has operated, and I think it's been successful. Like, I think players should not be negotiating their own contracts because, again, you're going to tear the relationship you have with the team. Lamar Jackson and the owner of the Baltimore Ravens have to get along if there's going to be a long-term future, and these negotiations, whether or not they're going good or bad, could ruin that future. And like it or not, whenever Lamar Jackson or whoever Lamar Jackson signs with, we are going to look at that contract and we are going to judge it based off, oh, did Lamar Jackson leave money on the table? And some people are going to act very harshly towards that contract. There will be critics who will say, wow, Lamar Jackson got the overall worst deal because he has made himself an easy target because we all know he doesn't have an agent. It's not an ideal situation for a guy entering free agency or entering a contract negotiation. I also didn't like the fact that he set a deadline for the negotiations. Like, that's what he's focusing on at the beginning of the season. I get it. You set a deadline. I've seen it over and over again. Players say, we have until the season starts to negotiate a deal. I just think Lamar Jackson should not be the one saying that. You should not be talking about the negotiations whatsoever. Tom Brady does not talk about his contract. Aaron Rodgers does not talk about his contract with the public. That's just how it should be, especially with the quarterback. This is the most important position in all of football. And at the beginning of the season, we're not talking about the promising Baltimore Ravens. We're talking about the future of Lamar Jackson and the franchise. I just think it creates an undue distraction that the team doesn't really need right now, and Lamar Jackson doesn't really need right now. Yes, he was going to get questions about his contract all season long because at the end of this deal, it's going to end and then he's either going to be franchised or he's going to come to a long-term agreement. I just didn't like the fact that he said those words, this is a deadline for the deal. I don't think a player should ever be saying those words, this is a deadline. I think their representatives should be the one telling the team that's a deadline. I don't think the public should ever know about a deadline for a deal between a team and a player. That kind of stuff should remain private. And listen, I'm not saying Lamar Jackson isn't smart enough to be his own agent. I just think in today's world especially, there should be a separation between the team and the player, and there should be a middleman who negotiates these deals. My take on the situation at the moment is that $133 million fully guaranteed is a very fair contract offer the Ravens gave Jackson. He's coming off of a season where he threw 16 touchdowns and had 13 interceptions. Those are subpar numbers by his standards. I also have zero interest in Lamar Jackson betting on himself and trying to get more money, but at the same time, I think he's a second-tier quarterback. He's with guys like Dak Prescott and Matthew Stafford. He's in the top 10, but outside of the top 5, and part of that has to do with his lackluster performance in the postseason, where Jackson is 1-3 with 3 passing touchdowns and 5 interceptions with a completion percentage of 55.9. Fair or unfair, that is how we rate franchise quarterbacks, by what they do in the postseason. Take a guy like Josh Allen, who last year led his team to within a game of the Super Bowl, and for that reason alone, I put him ahead of Jackson at this moment. From my viewpoint to change, Jackson needs to not only lead his team in the regular season, but also in the postseason. That's the thing missing from his already impressive resume. If the Ravens had given Jackson somewhere close to that $230 million fully guaranteed, I would have gone, wow, they really overpaid this guy because he hasn't done it in the postseason. I think the postseason matters most when it comes to these franchise quarterbacks. There's a ton of guys in the NFL who can put up numbers. We've seen it for decades now. There are quarterbacks like Kirk Cousins who put up impressive numbers numbers season after season, but what they don't do is they don't win in the postseason, and that's what put guys ahead of other guys. It's why Tom Brady is thought of as the greatest quarterback of all time, and why I put him ahead of a guy like Peyton Manning, who won 2 Super Bowls, but wasn't a guy like Tom Brady who can carry a team on their back and lead them to a Super Bowl no matter what team he's playing on. I personally just don't put Lamar Jackson in that category of quarterback who, if I put on any team, he instantly makes them a Super Bowl contender. Look, Patrick Mahomes, if I put Patrick Mahomes on any team in the NFL right now, I would put them as Super Bowl contending team. The same with Aaron Rodgers, the same with Tom Brady. You cannot say that about Lamar Jackson. I think he can put up impressive numbers wherever he is. I think his team would be very good. I just don't look at him as a guy who is going to lead your team to a championship game or a Super Bowl right now. He has to prove that that's what he is to be one of those top 5 highest paid quarterbacks in the league, in my estimation. That's why at the moment I put Jackson in a category with guys like Kyler Murray and Dak Prescott who put up impressive numbers. They are franchise quarterbacks, but they are not guys who at the moment can lead your team to a Super Bowl without question. Those guys are Tom Brady. Those guys are Aaron Rodgers. Those guys are Patrick Mahomes. Lamar Jackson is not that guy. So I think it would be insane if Lamar Jackson got paid more money than Patrick Mahomes. I don't care what the quarterback market is. That should not be the case. What's happening in the NFL right now with quarterback contracts, it's not about how long the deal is. It's about trying to get the majority, if not the whole contract, fully guaranteed. And I think where we are headed towards the future, where every starting quarterback in the NFL is given a fully guaranteed deal. This is the most important position in all of football, and more of them are getting the majority of their money fully guaranteed. I am just sick of these negotiations and seeing how much they get fully guaranteed. Just give them a fully guaranteed deal and get it over with, because they're just trying to one-up one another. Oh, Kyler Murray got this much fully guaranteed? Well, I'll give Lamar Jackson just a bit more than that. Remember when we used to talk about how giving your quarterback the most amount of money possible was bad for your team? Like, remember all those years when the Colts weren't winning Super Bowls and we all said it's because, they have to give Peyton Manning a boatload of money. They have way too much money invested in the quarterback position. That seems to be going away, isn't it? Like, look at the Chiefs with Patrick Mahomes. He is the majority of their money. Yet it looks like they've spent that wisely because he is making everyone around him better. I think gone are the days of, I'm overpaying my quarterback. The position is more important now more than ever. The money is growing. The Cleveland Browns gave $230 million fully guaranteed so they could upgrade over Baker Mayfield, who's average to below average, to get a guy who's super above average and could be elite. The Green Bay Packers basically drafted Aaron Rodgers' as replacement and then turned around when he won 2 more MVPs and was like, never mind, we want you to remain with this team forever because you're super elite. I don't care how much money you want, we're going to give you what you want. Teams are now going to give the quarterback whatever they want, and I'm not really sure that anything bad is going to happen to them, because the best case scenario for the Green Bay Packers is to have Aaron Rodgers at whatever money he wants to be at. But that's the thing, you have to pick the right guy to give that kind of money to. So I understand why the Ravens are hesitant to do that for Lamar Jackson, because there is is this the right guy to give that boatload of money to? Because if you get that wrong, your franchise is going to go back 4 or 5 years. I don't think you'll ever have a situation like Tom Brady with the Patriots ever again, where the best quarterback in the league is playing for a fair number. Like, these numbers are becoming astronomical, and they're only going to grow by the day. I can only imagine what Justin Herbert is going to get from the Chargers down the line. My big question about Jackson is he the type of quarterback who is in an ideal situation, or is he the type of quarterback that you can build it around and no matter what, he's going to have success because those are two very different types of quarterbacks. This situation could be a win for both sides. Jackson might be on a path to a great season, and the Ravens could lock him up in the offseason or franchise him. Worst case scenario, this contract dispute ruins the relationship between team and quarterback, and both sides move on. I feel like the Ravens and Jackson are a perfect match. I think they've done everything right to build a winning football team around Lamar Jackson. They've become a run-first football team. They've let him do the stuff that makes Lamar Jackson an elite football player, and I think he's gotten some really good coaching from John Harbaugh. I think John Harbaugh has become one of the most underrated coaches in the NFL. I know it's been a while since he won a Super Bowl, but he is a Super Bowl winning coach, and at the very minimum, his teams remain consistent. It has never been a mess with the Baltimore Ravens. They have never been a mismanaged organization. John Harbaugh is as steady as a head coach can be. I also look at Greg Roman as one of the best offensive coordinators in all of football who really knows how to get the best out of a run-first quarterback. He led Colin Kaepernick to a Super Bowl, and he led Lamar Jackson to an MVP season. Both sides need each other. The Ravens need Jackson because he's their best player, and he's one of the most entertaining players in all of football. It is really fun to watch Lamar Jackson play the sport of football. My fear for Jackson is that he leaves the Ravens and goes to the highest bidder, who ends up being a very bad run organization, and he ends up on a loser. I think that's bad for the game, and I think it's bad for Lamar Jackson. I want Lamar Jackson to be on a team that has a chance to make the postseason and to see him on the biggest stage possible. I want to see Lamar Jackson turn his postseason troubles around. I want to see the chance. I want to see if Lamar Jackson can lead a team to a Super Bowl. And the Ravens give him the best chance to do that. You see it in the NFL all the time. So many times when a team drafts a young quarterback, they mismanage his career. That has not been the case for Jackson with the Ravens. I think the team has done right by the player, and I think the player has absolutely done right by the team. He's won an MVP. He's been a franchise-level quarterback. So yeah, I want that relationship to continue because I think that's what the NFL should be. There are way too many teams drafting quarterbacks and failing with them miserably and it not working out. So this is an example of how it can work out. So yes, I want that to continue. I want Lamar Jackson to remain a member of the Baltimore Ravens. Yeah, my opinion might change if some Super Bowl contending team goes after him, but my fear and likely the reality is the teams that are going to look for Lamar Jackson to be the savior are going to be the dreads of the NFL, the absolute worst teams in the league. Those will be the ones who are willing to give Lamar Jackson whatever amount of money he wants, and I don't think that's the best case scenario for Jackson or for the league. The best case is for Jackson to stay on the Baltimore Ravens. They're not one of the most historic franchises in the NFL, but they've been really consistent. They've won a Super Bowl with a guy like Joe Flacco. I obviously think they're capable of winning a Super Bowl with Lamar Jackson. Some will look at Jackson and question the long-term longevity of a running quarterback, and that's fair. I just wouldn't bet against him for at least the next 6 seasons. The guy has not even hit his prime. He is 25 years old. There's a good chance that his best football is in front of him, and that's saying a lot because this is a guy who's already won an NFL MVP. In conclusion, I hope this situation resolves itself. I hope Lamar Jackson goes out and has an amazing season this year. I don't want to see him get franchised this offseason because I think that would be the beginning of the end of this relationship because no player in the modern NFL reacts well to being franchised. That never works out, especially with the quarterback position. You cannot be franchising your franchise quarterback. It's a bad look, and if that happens, most of us will look at it and go, well, I guess Lamar Jackson is going to go elsewhere at the end of these 2 years of being franchised. I hope Jackson has an MVP caliber season, and at the end of the season, the Ravens reward him with a contract extension. I also really hope, I can't reiterate this enough, that Jackson has a stellar postseason this year because this guy kind of does need to have a bit of a bounce back season. Again, last year he had only 16 touchdowns and 13 interceptions interceptions and the team missed the postseason. I hope he has a stellar regular season and a stellar postseason ahead of him. I don't see this happening, but I do hope I just wake up one day and Lamar Jackson has signed a long-term deal to remain with the Baltimore Ravens. It's a perfect match of quarterback and franchise. Thanks for listening to this edition of Head to Head. I'm Cam McKinney, and there'll be a new episode of the podcast every Monday on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, so please rate, review, and subscribe.